So we've made a repo just called Ortelius Kubernetes, and within that repo, we now have the setup for we have Argo in the cluster, and then we have now the ability to push as we please. So we're now ready to start making application sets for the Ortelius deployments.
Okay.
And
so
then,
if you go up to the Ortelius org there, and let's say you go down, you'll see like Ortelius-ms, like that Ortelius ms text file. Yeah, any one of those. So this is one of the microservices, and in change the branch to deploy will work. You'll see there's the chart that is what we're using to deploy. So these charts are working, currently deploying everything out to the cluster via deploy hub and direct Helm calls, basically. So these are the working charts. You'll in each one of the MS Ortelius-ms, you'll see the chart directories.
Okay, and then I might make this a ticket to just for my to remind myself. So, are there any charts if we deploy them that they will do the Docker files will do some computations that you don't want and update databases, etc.?
No.
Okay.
So if you go into one of those, what ends up just give you kind of the flow of the process. Go into cloud build. Yeah, pick that deploy. Go to the cloud build, pick that one. So what we use is a little weird, but trying to give people exposure to a bunch of different tools. So when we check into the Git repo, there's triggers on the cloud build side that will look for the updates to the microservice. So what it basically is doing, the first step is going to get the SSH keys to connect up to GitHub. So then we can then do some work against GitHub. And then the next is logging into Quay. And then we set up some environment variables, like on line 31 and so on. That's where we're actually setting up all the information that we're going to pass over to Ortelius and Deploy Hub about this thing that we're building. And then the next step, like on line, was it 47, is where we start actually building and pushing over to Quay at that level. And then the next section
was... Are these all Docker builds?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, all of our microservices are Docker builds. So one of the things that is a weird kind of, I would say you have to do a workaround, is local Docker images don't have a digest associated with them until they're pushed over to a registry. So like on line 55, we actually have to go, after it's been pushed, we can go figure out what the digest is. And then finally on line 65 is where we start interfacing with, we're sending this information over to Deploy Hub to push all that content over and do the deployment. So one of the parameters there on that line looks like 70, where it has like DH update, that line there. One of the parameters there is to say, go and deploy this thing. So that's where once we get the Argo in place and we figure out what we need to update in the application sets, we would go ahead and do that connection at that level.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's kind of that's kind of what's happening in the build and deployment space right now.
So we could do once Argo CD has the event that, okay, there are changes to the repo, that then fires an Argo event with a little script that does all this work, right? Because you want to update the metadata.
Argo would be invoked post build.
Post build. So this is the CI process, and then okay, and then you'd go after CI is done.
The deploy hub is doing the deployment. So the section, was it 64 to 70? Those lines down there near the bottom are what is actually doing the deployment steps. So that's the CD part. Those few lines there.
And where does Argo come into it then?
So we would then, as part of the Ortelius process, we would, like we talked about, update the application. I think it would be the application repo with like the new information. Either do it directly and just trigger off of a commit, or we can get fancy and do like a PR and merge the PR.
Yeah.
I think the first step would just be whatever the simplest. If we just commit, then have Argo go ahead and sync off of that commit. Just commit directly to master for now, and then we can get into branch type of things down the road.
I mean, this is more Argo events than CD, right? That we're talking about.
No, so the first stage will always be we will still have to have pipelines. So until we completely set up Argo workflows and Argo CD, because
that's what I mean. Like we're missing,
if you want to completely have everything within Kubernetes, you have to have Argo workflows, because otherwise there's no CI/CD. And the Docker build part will have to be replaced, because I'm not sure on what version the cluster currently is. If it is 1.20, Docker shim is already deprecated. And as of 1.22 in Kubernetes, it's going to be completely taken away. So Docker shim is not going to exist anymore within Kubernetes. Currently, it doesn't make a difference because you all are building it locally within GitHub, but I'm not sure what type of runner GitHub is running in the first place. So if GitHub internally runs on Kubernetes, then it will make a difference. But ideally, I'm going to assume that they would be separate from that. Like they wouldn't really create a situation which would be impacting that.
Yeah, we can change over from doing a Docker build. We can go to like to Conoco or build or one of the other ones, Shipwright. Something like that. That's on the CI part, so that's not terribly complicated.
That's pretty straightforward. That literally is like a 2-minute script. I've already migrated all my my current client stuff to Canico, so
okay.
But as I said, right, like I don't think GitHub will create a problem. I'm assuming GitHub, hopefully their pipelines, when they have created them being aware of all these different situations. So if they still use Kubernetes, they would have taken care of that, I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah, this is a Google Cloud build YAML, so slightly different than the GitHub Actions, but they all achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the step where Argo is going to come in to play is instead of Ortelius or Deploy Hub interacting directly with Helm to do the deployment, we would interact with the Git repo to supply the new values files, and then Argo takes off from there.
I see. Yeah, I understand.
That sounds perfect. you would have locations. So you showed us a microservice. Is that the only microservice?
No, there's Brad, if you go over to the portal.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn my video off because my keyboard's not working and I have to like put the screen down to see my big screen. Otherwise, you'll see my fingers.
Or if you want me to share, either way.
No, that's okay.
Go over to the Azure portal.
Oh, yeah. Here we are.
And go into the cluster 2 AKS.
Yeah.
Resource group 1. Yeah, that'll work. That should. And there it is. And if you look at workloads and just filter on the namespace for Ortelius.
Sure.
Yeah, bottom one. So these are the microservices that are running. So the first two top ones, the Ortelius docs and Ortelius www, those are Nginx containers running our documentation and website. So those are in the same namespace, but they're not connected to the other microservices. Those two are being routed through an Istio ingress. So Istio, we've exposed, if you go to the services and ingresses, you'll see where we have things kind of coming in. And filter namespaces. Oh, no, just leave it like that. I'm sorry. So there's the Istio ingress, which is the 156. That is, if you go to like docs.ortelius.io or www.ortelius.io, that's getting routed over to this service, and this service then has the backend endpoints of those workflows. So Istio's handling these two guys through that ingress. If you go back to the ingresses, you'll see that there's another one called MS Nginx. Yeah. So that's the ingress for all the microservices, the UI, the validate user, and stuff like that. The reason why I chose Nginx is so it makes easier for people to bring it down locally and run locally without having to install Istio as part of that process. So we will eventually get to an Istio routed version of the microservices. But for now, I just did the Nginx reverse proxy.
Yeah,
so
I was just going to say that'll be down the line. I'd like to do a little bit of that because I want to learn more about Istio. I haven't used it yet, so that would be a good task to learn.
Yeah, if you've done anything with Nginx, you'll find that it's like 100% easier.
Okay.
I've
got lots of Nginx.
Than Nginx reverse proxies. It doesn't have as many of the weird quirks that Nginx has.
Okay.
So that's kind of what's happening. So if you go back over to workloads, it'll be just a little easier to see. And just go back to that namespace Ortelius. So those, everything except for the top two are what we need to deploy. The first three there, the MSUI, the Nginx in general, are all coming from the same repo. It's just there's different charts in that repo. And then the bottom five have their own repo with their own charts.
Yeah, and this one is that like, what repo is that called? Just to
Ortelius/Ortelius.
Okay.
So this is the monolith part. So if you go to change your branch there to service catalog, the very bottom one, SVC cat. So if you go into charts now, you'll see there's the 3 charts that we're using. That bottom one is deprecated. I just got to delete it.
Okay. And then Amit, in terms of the application set, anything pointed at a chart, it'll just deploy all the charts in this, correct?
Yeah. So this is the mono repo as you showed us, right, Steve?
Yeah, this is the mono repo that has, on the mono repo side, we split it out into basically the general is the Tomcat server running all of the backend endpoint code. And then the MS UI is still a Tomcat server, but it's been stripped out where it doesn't have any of, it's just the JS code and the jQuery code for the front end. So we did a kind of a break just to help with being able to do some level of incremental deployments on the monolith, but it's nothing, very detailed. And then the Nginx is the reverse proxy to reverse proxy, not only to these 2 other monolith pieces, but also to the other microservices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in total, there are only 4 microservices. No, 4.
There's 5 microservices, 2 monolith, and then the reverse proxy.
Okay. So where are the other locations of the microservices? Are they already within Helm charts, or is there something we need?
No. So if you go up to the Ortelius org and just go to your repositories filter. And just type type in Ortelius -ms. So these are the pretty much the 5. There's some extra ones, but you'll see that every microservice has its own repo. It's going to be the top 5 in this list that were updated. I can give you the list so you guys know.
Yeah, I think if we have time, we'll definitely make a ticket today for the next piece of work.
Yeah.
So are we saying that if we deploy all this, that's essentially how you deploy an Ortelius? Okay, awesome. This is great.
Yeah. So if you deploy the top 5 plus the monolith charts, you're good. So it'll be the total of 8 charts.
Yeah.
3
coming. I was going to say this is great for Adam to learn how Ortelius is deployed as well when we start playing with Kipton.
Yeah. The next question is, now since they are mono repo as well as poly repo, do you want to have one application set for each mono repo, or do you want to have one common application set for all your repositories which are trying to get deployed? Because if that's the case, we'll have to change. I'm not sure what your file format structure is in, but we'll have to make it all consistent in order for it to work with multi or poly repo.
Yeah, I think we're pretty consistent. Everything is going to have a chart directory underneath the root of the repo, and then the chart that corresponds to that that microservice is going to be in there, and that should be the only one that's in there.
Yep, that's perfect.
Yeah. So whatever works easier on your side.
We'll first try poly repo so that all the charts try and get deployed. And if we run into any issues and we end up spending too much time, then we'll move to 2 separate application sets for mono repos.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. And then, so I guess, and then what one has like an ingress, for example, like if you have like a console or something?
It will be the mono has the ingress.
The monos, okay.
So Ortelius/Ortelius. Yeah.
I'm just for testing purposes, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you brought up the it's the SV key cat. If you brought up like that plus, well, what will happen is we may have to change the Nginx slightly. Nginx will fail until all of the backend services are available. There is a flag in Nginx to tell it to ignore that, so it can actually come up and ignore the errors if a backend service doesn't exist. That we may need to do that in the Nginx config.
Okay, that's on the. We're not talking about the Nginx. We're not talking about the ingress controller. We're talking about the container level Nginx, right?
It would be so if you go back to the cluster,
yeah,
and go to ingresses, and you'll see there should be a MS Nginx with a yeah. So that one is so this is a type of a load balancer, and the service that external IP address is connecting to is Nginx running in a container.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, understood.
So it's nothing fancy.
Yeah. No, it's cool.
Basically, we're just exposing an external IP address to that Nginx container.
Yeah. Yep.
And then in the Nginx is where we do all the routing. So if you go back over to the Ortelius GitHub repo.
Yep. Ortelius.
And go up to Ortelius, up to the root. And then this is just in a bad location for now, but I got to move it around. If you go to DM admin web, yeah, you just had it all right underneath cloud build, and then microservice, and then Nginx conf, the second from the bottom. So this is what we're using to do the reverse proxying.
Okay.
So when that external endpoint comes in, it hits this configuration file basically. And then this is where the upstreams are for the reverse proxying.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of stuff to handle posts versus gets on splitting out some of the traffic. And then in here, everything gets rerouted from HTTP traffic to HTTPS. So everything will go through and hit the cert. So that's what that bottom part's doing. And when we build the in the Kubernetes cluster, we've uploaded the certificate key and the certificate itself to a Kubernetes secret as opaque files, basically. And that's how this guy picks up the keys from Kubernetes on a volume mount, basically.
Yeah, and all that's specified in the Helm charts, eh?
What's that?
All this is in the Helm charts, like
yeah, the Helm. This is all part of the build of the Docker build handles all this. So you get a basically a Nginx that's all packaged up, ready to go.
Yeah. And one, you go first, Simon.
So the certificate private keys, so where is that stored? Are you all deploying that with your deployment, and you all would have a secret variable within your code build? Or how does that?
If you go over to the cluster and go to the, I think it's on the workload. Let's take a look at that, the MS Nginx one. Yeah, look at the YAML now. So if you go down, you'll see there should be a volume mount. Go up a little bit. So there's the volume mount of the SSL, and then in the so it's coming from there. It's on like line 146. So that's where the volume's coming from, and there's a secret out there called Nginx Secret that's been added to Kubernetes.
Okay. So your volume is just like an EBS volume, which is already present with the secret.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we just do a create a secret YAML, and then we just apply that to the cluster with the right. We do that outside of Helm, just manually.
We can do that with sealed secrets as well, and then we can have it in the Git repo if you want.
No, I'd rather leave the certificate chain out of Git.
Okay.
Even though we could encrypt it in there, it just feels safer not to have extra things laying around.
Yeah, then you don't have true GitOps, I guess, but at the same, that's fine.
Yeah, for something that changes once a year, not.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, we don't want to be like too cool for school.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening. I mean, we could theoretically, like you said, move it over there, but I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah. Okay. There'll be a point in time where I would probably suggest that you all move to Cert Manager rather than managing your certificates manually and renew it manually. But that's a discussion for another time. And
yeah, I had to find out. Like one of the things I wanted to do was use Let's Encrypt, but I could not get Let's Encrypt working with Istio. So that was one of the things that I just had to do a workaround until we can figure out how to get Let's Encrypt with Istio, because there's some weird exposure things you got to do.
Cool.
Did you try that with using Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt?
Mm-hmm.
And then interesting.
Yeah, it was something with the Cert Manager, and I can't remember. I tried it a while ago. Now it may be fixed because more people are starting to adopt Istio. But Cert Manager would not cooperate. Put it that way.
We can maybe reach out to the Captain people, Adam, because they're like experts in Istio as well, and they've probably done these challenges before as well.
Yeah. So that the long term for the clusters is to get. Right now we have two clusters, kind of the DevOps one and this kind of production one. But merge that all into one bigger cluster. Have everything go through the Azure front end, and then Istio for the routing. That's the long-term goal, but we just got to take baby steps to get there.
Sure.
Yep. That should be fine. Also, regarding Argo events, I reached the last part of it. You remember we spoke about the source, the event bus, and the last part. The last part requires either Argo workflows or something else for it to work. So you can create a source, you can create an event bus, but you definitely need Argo workflows, or there are other tools it supports as well. But you need something where there can be a pipeline which will run. For example, FPS or something else, or create your own custom event destination type of solution.
Okay.
So I started working on the Argo workflows solution because it just makes sense to have everything Argo family.
Yep.
Yeah. So I am currently just working on that. It's pretty straightforward. So I should be done by the next sprint.
Nice. Yeah, I watched I'm part of the SIG events working group, and they had somebody from Argo do a presentation and kind of run through the events piece and the workflow. Let me see if I can find that the link to that recording, and I'll forward it on to you.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I joined that group as well. It's interesting.
Yeah. So the triggers that are available to us is Argo workflow trigger, Lambda, HTTP trigger, NATS trigger, which is again you're hitting another source, destination, a Kafka trigger, a Kubernetes object trigger, which means creating a new Kubernetes object as the trigger, log trigger, Slack trigger, Azure event hubs trigger, and custom trigger. So custom trigger would be if you all want to build your own, or I just found that it makes more sense to piggyback on the Argo workflow one because you can pretty much build your own. Plus, in future, you can probably migrate your entire CI/CD to Argo workflows.
Right. Right. It'll be interesting to see which is going to be more advantageous to work with, whether you're going to be on the Captain front or the Argo workflows, or a mix of the two.
Okay. So does Captain have its own trigger?
I think the trigger for what?
A trigger to perform a workflow. So that's why I'm guessing Steve mentioned Captain, right? So does Captain do workflows?
Yeah, so Captain will do a whole workflow. They call it, I want to say, you create
sequence.
Sequence.
Is that what it is? And is that the shipyard file?
Yeah. So you have a sequence, and then inside a sequence you have tasks. But I guess we can listen for Argo. Getting the terminology all mixed up, but we can listen for Argo stuff, or we can trigger Argo. So either way around. And that's what I'm trying to figure out as well, is what do we listen to? When do we listen to it? And when would Captain push back, and where to? I can't quite get my head around the flow.
Okay, maybe we should have a call separately, Adam. I think I'm across Argo and you're across Captain, and I don't think I have much. I'm not across Captain at all. So yeah, maybe
same for me with Argo.
and kind of my guess on where the not necessarily crossover, but the integration would be from if you look at just Argo as the GitOps model, and you just let Argo do the heavy lifting of everything once it hits the Git repo, and the Git is triggering something other than a build. This is for deployment pieces, for example, that we would actually go ahead and trigger Argo CD to go ahead and bring the cluster into the correct state to match the Git repo. Now, things like on the Captain side, I would see Captain looking at the Git repos of the source code, doing the CI piece, doing the build, doing the push, doing testing, doing all those things. And then once you're happy with that, Captain would then either talk to Ortelius to do the deployment, or talk to Argo directly. And Ortelius would talk to Argo, or Captain talks to Argo directly at that level. But I'm seeing, the way I'm kind of envisioning Argo's role in this is basically like Ansible, not Ansible, Puppet, where it literally kept the state of a machine in sync. And that's kind of the role I see Argo playing in an event-driven world. Is its job is to keep the state of this cluster where I want it to be, and all the other workflow pieces are more event-driven around that through Captain. And
so when just so I've got it right in my head, when you update a Helm chart, Argo is automatically going to pick that up and deploy it.
Yeah.
Is there my original thought was, is there a way we can pause that because my original thought was you build a new artifact and then you want to see whether that's actually healthy or not before you just go and blindly deploy it. So I thought what we could do there is put a Captain Quality Gate in to say, right, here are your tests. We've got a new artifact. Go away and run some basic tests and just give a green tick. And then Argo can decide, knows it's healthy enough to deploy. Because otherwise you're in a situation where you're just blindly deploying potentially bad code.
Yeah, and that's where... go ahead, Amit.
No, go ahead.
So this is where it gets a little confusing, and we still need to flesh it out. But the Helm chart, let's say we take our one of our microservices, the text file microservice. The Helm chart that defines the template of the Kubernetes manifest is kept in the text file repo. Now, just because we have the manifest looking there, what we need to do is when we do a build, we're going to have a new image tag that we just want to apply as part of the deployment. So that's where we separate the data from definition, and that's going to be in a values file. So what ends up happening on the Helm side is you take a values file and you apply it to the template, to the chart, and that's what at the end of the day generates a substituted, a completed Kubernetes manifest file that then gets sent out to the cluster. So the way I'm kind of looking at it is the Helm chart would exist in the microservice like text file repo. The values file will probably end up getting in a different repo, which should be the, what do they call it? It's not necessarily the application, the app of apps repo would be where the values file would probably apply to, and then we just kind of merge the two together at that level. So to kind of answer your question, Adam, when the developers are interacting with their source code repo, their microservice, they're going to be changing source code. They're going to check in. That's going to, Captain's going to catch that they just did a source code change. We need to rebuild. We do the build. We can do our tests. We can get our new image out there, our new tag. And then at the tail end of that, we have to then go and update the values file with the new tag. And that would be hitting the app of app repo with the new tag information. And that's when you do that update into that app of app repo, that's when Argo is going to actually take off and actually apply and bring the state of the cluster in sync with the state of the Git repos.
Okay, so if we bring
does that kind of help?
in, I think so, because now you're thinking bring Captain in earlier in the process, and then Captain will already know about that stuff. And you're right, it's only when that values file, basically Captain in my head won't update that values file until it's healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
What I was thinking is Captain wasn't involved until the values file is updated.
No,
and
it's going to be point. Yeah, you're going to be doing all the pre-work.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also any of the post work. So after it deploys and you want to do a blue-green test cases, load balancing, that's where Captain would come into play as well, post deployment.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
There is no app of apps repo anymore like it used to be with the concept of application set, by the way, Steve.
I couldn't remember if we still need that repository, or how
no, anymore. So app of apps was the concept before application set. So application set is the new way of doing things. If you used to use app of apps, you can migrate off to application sets, and they follow certain. Obviously, you'll have to create a new application set, but henceforth you won't need any of those changes. But your end concept is still the same, where till you update the values file, nothing gets affected within your respective deployment. The only question or catch is, what if you're updating the chart itself?
right?
Then everything changes, right? So the way this is the chart itself, which is getting, say you want to put another ingress into your chart or something like that, then maybe we need to think of other ways of testing it, or having a separate application set which deploys only dev branches. So if it fails there, then we'll have to, if fail, then trigger something and roll back, etc. Something to that effect.
Right. And just so to make sure I understand the application sets, we can make the application sets look for changes in a particular directory in the Git repo. Yep. So it's not going to react to every single Git change.
Yeah, correct.
Will react to every single Git change, provided it reflects in the values file.
Okay.
Let's look
the
at one.
Other catch. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to bring one up to talk over it. Might be make more sense.
Yeah, it'll be easier for sure.
Yeah.
The other catch is, along with that, you can also specify a specific branch. So as you can see, target version or revision on line 12. So that will specify what branch to look at. And then you have the paths where your charts are specifically deployed or where your charts are located. Okay. This is where it picks up the charts from.
And in those directories, we could have we can go through and update the values file with a new image tag, right?
Yes, like line number 34. So if you see on line number 34, what I'm doing is just picking up that specific cluster name, which is production, part.base, which is the name of the chart, hyphen values.yaml. So in that case, it's going to be production hyphen whatever chart name, like say I'm deploying Argo events. So production hyphen Argo events hyphen values.yaml.
Got it.
But if I don't want to do that on all my clusters, I can have a separate cluster which only does dev deployments. So if there is a failure on a dev cluster, we can contain it there, and we can probably create a trigger, or like obviously captains is going to be there to protect it, as well as we'll see that if captain fails, do not progress to another environment.
Right. So Adam, on your side, so on this side, if we look at the kind of the use case scenario, the developer updates the source code. They do their commit. We'll just keep it simple. They do a commit. They didn't touch the values file at that point. They're only touching their source code. So Argo is going to ignore that commit at that point. Mm-hmm. Captain will capture that commit because of the source code change, do the build, do the push, get the image, do your string tests. And then from there, once you're happy with it, we have to take the new image tag and apply it to the values file. Now, when we do that, Argo is going to take off and start doing its work on getting the deploying to the cluster. But when we do that commit, we have to make sure that Argo doesn't go into a loop and start all over again saying, oh, I just got a new update to the library. to the repo. Now I have to go through and build again. You have to kind of ignore that commit to the values file, or we'll get in this loop. And I don't know if Captain can do that.
So, just to clarify, it sounds right, but Captain itself isn't really going to do anything. Captain's going to be the orchestrator to do things. What we'll need are services hanging off, like microservices hanging off Captain, to actually do the work. So that's where that check or that safety would live. Let me pull up a shipyard file and I'll show you.
But does that make sense? Because we're kind of updating the same repository in the middle of a workflow. So you're in the middle of a end-to-end workflow pipeline, and due to the deployment, we have to go and update that same pipeline, the same repo that pipeline's being hung off of. So as soon as you do that second commit, you could end up triggering another CI build, for example, which we want to avoid because it's not really a source code change. It's a deployment change. And then you just get into this infinite loop. Which we want to avoid.
Imagine doing a flow diagram of that. You'd say, like, if this goes wrong, now this has changed. What do I do now?
Yeah. So in my case, for example, when I'm trying to change just an image tag, what happens is first, obviously, I just committed to code. That in turn may or may not build a new image. Now, in my case, if I commit the new file to code, there has to be a Docker build or build of an image that runs. That in turn will then get deployed by Argo CD, but only with the old tag, since it doesn't realize that has changed yet. That's just an automatic sync, which you don't really touch. That in turn, once I push the new tag, it goes and triggers an Argo event. That in turn goes and triggers an Argo workflow to go and push this new commit SHA into the production cluster, into GCR. And only then will it go and then update. The last step would be updating the file itself with the new SHA. Because when you update the file, doesn't mean that the image tag gets updated yet, right? Because we have not yet completed the build part of it.
Right, but you've updated the repository with the commit with the new image tag, though, haven't you?
No, the image tag update happens automatically from Argo events. Argo events is doing the image tag update. I'm only updating the code itself. So the Docker build part is the one which actually creates your image tag, right? Or the build SHA or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's the first step is only doing nothing. It just means that I've committed a new file. So Argo, first of all, won't really realize that you've committed a new file till it sees a difference in either the values.yaml or the chart itself.
And
so
when it's looking for changes in the values file, is it looking at the event or the Git repo itself?
The Git repo itself, but you're not making a change in the values file, is what I'm saying. So when I'm trying to push a new change, I only push the change itself in the code. I do not update the values file automatically.
Right.
What happens is when you push the change, that triggers a build.
Yeah.
So when I say that triggers a build, that can be from Argo events or wherever.
Right.
So assume in this case, I'm just pushing this image using GCR or whatever you're doing, Argo events, etc. Right. It's Argo events which detects this change, goes and triggers an Argo workflow to go and make a change in the values file.
Oh, okay.
So workflows will make the change in the values file with the new image tag at the end of your entire pipeline.
That makes sense. Because then only then will the CD grab it and then deploy it, right?
Yes, because you don't want to make these changes manually.
Yeah. And then you also don't want to do it before it's time, before the test has passed.
Yes. So what happens is whatever test cases you have, that you can run on a completely separate quality gate or whatever Captain, etc. And only after those quality gates are confirmed, Captain can then trigger another Argo workflow, which will then go and basically update the respective values.yaml.
Can I, that's exactly what I've just been typing in the background. Can I just share my screen? I'll show you what that would look like.
Yeah, sure.
It might help. So you're absolutely right. Captain works on shipyards, and basically you have stages. So these can be called whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, but dev. And then you have sequences. So sequences by default stand alone. So if I run the build sequence, basically as a human or as another tool, you would say dev.build.triggered, and then Captain would go away and start running the tasks for you. So in my case, first, second, evaluation. So this is where we would build up, like build the image, get the Git stuff, build the image, do whatever we need to do. And then when we're done, we do evaluation. Now evaluations, these again can be named anything. Not release. Evaluation's a special one because we already have a microservice called the Lighthouse service that listens for evaluation.triggered. Now in the background, what happens, Captain will go ahead and generate and distribute first.triggered in this case. So that it'll fire out an event, and it's down to some sort of tooling, some sort of microservice to listen for that first.triggered event and do its thing. Second.triggered and so on. So Captain will basically wait until the microservice that listens for this signals that first.finished with a result, and then Captain will go away and do second and so on. So now this sequence here will only run triggered on when the dev.build.finished event occurs, because once you get to the end of this task, Captain knows, well, I'm finished that sequence.
Yeah.
And it will only run when that is finished and the evaluation result for that was a pass. And then it will go and run this update values file.
Correct. So my question now is, if you have Argo events and Argo workflows, which basically consists of a sensor and a trigger, which basically means that first you wait for an update and then you trigger that update. Isn't it already somewhat like what Captain is doing?
Yeah. So yeah. I think like you don't need both. Like I think Captain in a way is better because this is so generic. If you change it on the other end, and you can bring your own tools to it, using Captain as a control plane makes sense. That's without knowing about too much about the sensors and stuff, but to have those what sort of test and performance testing do we do, Steve? Do we have much for Ortelius yet?
No, we have not set up anything along those lines.
Okay. I think I'll actually have to step away with Adam and, properly discuss what Argo events does and then understand what Captain does.
It does seem like there's a bit of a crossover.
I think it's a big crossover because essentially it's doing the same thing.
Yeah. So maybe we don't require Argo events anymore. So the trigger part of it is not there. And what can happen is you just have Argo workflows and Captain triggers these workflows. And then Captain is managing the quality gates for it. And it's only talking to Argo workflows. In that sense, you would not require something called Argo events anymore.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well. Just focusing on Argo to do the heavy lifting of around the deployment piece, and that's where in my mind I keep on thinking of Argo as a state manager than like an event control plane like Captain. So,
yes.
So that's the way I view Argo as more of a state state manager, make sure that the state of this cluster for this environment is in sync with my Git repo.
Okay. So probably the reason of the confusion is there are so many things in the Argo family. So Argo CD is the state manager. Argo events is an events manager, or probably exactly what Captain, similar to what Captain does, but Captain has features. So where Captain would most probably step in is replacing Argo events to manage the quality gates. And then you have Argo workflows at the end, which takes care of any deployments or updates, etc., that Captain wants to make to the files, like line number 22, update value file. I'm not sure whether Captain does it on its own or it requires a third-party microservice to perform that activity.
So Captain's just going to orchestrate this. All of this requires, any of these tasks need a service to listen to. So what I originally thought in my head was, you build an image, you get the container. When that is done, you basically strip out that. Let's just not call that build anymore. And then some tool would say, right, I've got a new image, dev.blah.triggered, and Captain would then say, and you, as part of the payload for that triggered event, you can send in the image and repo ID. Some service here, the Lighthouse would pick that up and say, cool, I've got a new artifact to evaluate. And then it would pass the result back. You wouldn't even have this. You would just have whatever service here sending the evaluation result outbound to
Ortelius, exactly.
And then Ortelius fail.
Yeah, then Ortelius would do the update values file.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like anything, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but it's about what if someone doesn't want to use Argo, for example? What if they want to use something else? I don't know. It's choices.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if you like get into Weaveworks or CodeFresh, you know, those other CodeFresh isn't really a good example, but I think Spinnaker is starting to have some pieces around GitOps. But Adam, in your example there, the update values file, that microservice would be more than likely Ortelius.
Okay, so that would listen for the update val file.triggered event and react to that. And then Ortelius would signal, I'm finished updating my value file. And then what next? And we can build, as you can see here, you can build sort of workflows.
And then you could do two things on that path. You can have Ortelius just go ahead and update the values file and then just come back and said, I did that. Or you could have Ortelius go ahead and update the values file and then sit there and wait for it to be completed. For the deployment to be complete, and then come back and tell you the results. So you can kind of do a background process and continue on, or you can have Ortelius wait for the whole process to finish, and then it'll come back to Captain to go on to the next step. So either way, we can make it work.
Yeah, because then you could have Ortelius, just like here when we manually started this dev.blah.triggered, you could have Ortelius firing a new event, dev.second.blah.triggered. So it doesn't really matter how long that gap is, because as I say, these sequences are standalone. So as soon as that's finished to Captain, it's as soon as Ortelius signals that it is finished, let's say.
Yeah, that's exactly.
This is cool stuff. It's awesome.
So the couple of questions in my head: is it Argo? Is it Captain? Does it really matter? Because we can actually trigger. Let's put a task in here. You could have Argo listening for new.triggered. So you can, and then Argo goes away and runs its workflow. and comes back and says, I'm finished running my new triggered workflow, now do an evaluation.
Right.
You can even have Argo listening for this stuff and then reacting.
I would propose to be real simple, just keep Captain and then update values for Argo CD to start with.
Yeah.
Or with Ortelius in the middle of them. What do you think on it? On mute. He's gone. Yeah, this is cool stuff. And Adam, when you send back the event to say that it's finished, that's just a cloud event, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
And so when you say when you go back to telling Ortelius that the build has been done and that part of it is already completed, and you want to go ahead and do a deployment to Kubernetes plus a database update, because databases don't necessarily live inside of Kubernetes. We'll be able to interact with both worlds. So we're not constrained to Kubernetes when you start talking to Ortelius.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Because that was my other thought here is, can we start? Argo seems very, very, it's cloud native, but
it's
not.
Yeah.
As much as we'd like, we're not all in a cloud native world.
Yeah, it's very, yeah, definitely. Like I have some customers that use Salesforce or Lambda, and you're going to go through the build process is slightly different for like a Lambda function. So for Lambda, you end up creating a zip file, and you check that zip file into like Artifactory or something like that. And then from there, you have to upload that zip file through an S3 bucket and then unzip it and tell AKS about, or AWS about it. So you can mix and match just through the Captain Ortelius interface, dealing with Lambda files as well as Kubernetes updates in the same pass.
Yep. If the more I hear about it, the more it sounds like Argo events is similar to Captain, and Captain can replace Argo events because I'm guessing Captain can trigger Lambda, as so can Argo events in that case. But I think Captain has more quality gate features than Argo events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you, one of the things that if you look at a microservice poly repo, if you have 100 repos, I can't remember, Adam, is there a single shipyard file or is there one for each? So if we have 100 microservices that we wanted to build and deploy, does each microservice have its own shipyard?
No. So the structure is a project, and then multiple services, so microservices within projects, and then stages within those projects.
Yeah. So your Ortelius is lined up the same way. So
okay.
We great minds think alike.
I can't take any credit for that. I will though. I'll take it.
Yeah, say yes.
Yep.
Okay. Because if you want to, let's say in the whole process, we want to go ahead and add in a security scan. We want to make it as simple as possible to add in that step into the whole pipeline process. Whether it's going to be pre-deployment, like you run a trivia against your image, or post-deployment where you're going to do some sort of, inbound traffic, denial of service type of attack. We want to add in a security scan, a security quality gate. Being able to add that in with minimal changes would be great.
So that would
Hey,
be
folks,
added.
sorry, I need to drop off. I'll catch up with Brad later.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Amit.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank
That would
you.
be added
Bye.
as a task, and then in the shipyard at the project level, and then all of the services will just pick that up.
Perfect.
Now, there are project service and stage filters. So when you're listening to these events, you can say only listen on this service if you wanted to go down to that level. But
right. Perfect. Yeah, I think that's going to give us a lot of control and a really good story to be able to focus on that type of scale and being able to manage the deployment to the cluster through, like I said, more of a state management of the cluster through Argo. That's just my view.
Yeah, it makes sense. It takes a while to wrap your head around all of that, but I do understand. Yeah, we've talked about this many times, but
yeah, think of Puppet. Yeah. If you ever worked with Puppet,
only Ansible.
But yeah. Only Ansible. Yeah, Ansible was a push methodology. Puppet was had an agent on every single VM, and it would listen to the master. And anytime the VM got out of sync with the master, it would go ahead and re-download all the packages and bring itself into the correct state with the master. So that's the same concept around GitOps. You know, you want GitOps to be the single source of truth, and you want to bring everything into that desired state that you have in your GitOps repo.
With all the stuff in between to get to that state, to define that state.
Yeah, there's a few steps.
It's very fascinating stuff, though, isn't it? I really love these cloud events as well.
Yeah.
If that special interest group can crack that, that'll be huge. Like, it's just gonna. Yeah, I'm really excited for that.
For what? Sorry, what piece?
Just the cloud events and the standardization of events and tooling across. You know, go and spend 6 months building all our integrations into this, and then we've changed the tool, so we throw it all away, and that whole thing just goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, they keep on building on to the proof of concept. So it's I think when we hook together, when we start doing the Ortelius events, we'll probably be focused on a generic cloud event instead of one that's specific to Captain.
Yeah.
And same thing on the Argo side. You know, when we start listening to Argo, would want to get in there and kick out cloud events of some sort.
I've been playing around with them as well. So I've made a little bit of code to like receive and push them as well.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good fun. Okay.
And then, you know, I mean, you know, some of the big use case scenarios that I keep on thinking about that the SIG events is going to be challenged by is, let's say you have a Node.js package that you just fixed a security vulnerability in, and now that's out in the Node.js repo world, and now I need to go and rebuild all my Docker images that consume that, so I can automatically kick off a process that's going to put basically just like Dependabots, you know, it's going to go through, it's automatically going to merge in, rebuild, get everything out into the dev environment for people to start testing. And think about that happening worldwide. You know, a single update needs to go tell millions of consumers that you need to go rebuild, and how are we going to handle that?
There'd need to be safeties in there as well, because what if someone pushes some bad code into there and everything is just automatically rebuilt with some rogue code in it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's why you on something along those lines, it has to be a specific path of a pipeline that's more, I wouldn't say verifiable, but has a, you know, it's going to go through a longer path of testing or something like that, or verification, than some internal code.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll get in on now. Lay on top of that, you put some AI in there to determine if that code's good.
Maybe blockchain. Put some blockchain in the mix as well.
I actually did look at blockchain. It's called supply chain management now, but the problem with blockchain is you can't put a large payload into the blockchain. You can't put, a Docker image, a 4 gig Docker image in the blockchain. It'll just crash it. It's these small little couple, was it not a non-fungible token, maybe the way to do it along those lines. But there's a whole custodial chain that we need to look at as part of this as well. So
this is exciting stuff.
Yeah, some interesting stuff coming.
Okay, so we'll go away. We've got Captain running now as well. And then we have Argo CD. I think this 2 weeks will really focus on getting Ortelius up and running in the cluster. And then we can start playing around with it.
Yeah, so I would say we take those 8 microservices and start deploying them into the cluster with Argo. And then we just keep on add on Captain, add on the other pieces around those.
Do you have 5 minutes more just if we can make a quick ticket?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking it was 5 microservices and
it's 5 microservices plus the 3 monolith.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, understood. Yeah, now I understand.
So it's a total of 6 repos.
Yeah.
Gents, I've got to drop off to prep for my next call. Great to see you again, and we'll catch up, Brad. And
I'll
nice
talk to
one.
you today. All right. See you soon, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. And then workloads, Ortelius namespace.
Yeah.
And then we're saying not those 2, but the rest. Is that what we're saying?
The rest, yeah.
Yeah.
And the top 3, the UI, Nginx in general, all come from a mono.
Yeah.
The other ones are going to come from a repo with a similar name.
Yeah, and one more question. These Docker images, let's choose just any. This one. Where's
see, Deploy Up deploys them, so it's they end up in a temporary overrides file.
And just values. Let me just go to the values. So
yeah, let me update it with the correct.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, and then do we have access to pull those containers?
Yeah,
those images.
Yeah.
Okay, we do.
So if you go back to Kubernetes,
yeah,
the easiest go into one of the YAMLs for those. Yeah, go to the image tag. We use Quay, so you'll see. Keep going right there. You just passed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all those are public images. So if you go to the quay.io/Ortelius, you'll see where all of those are.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go into one of them, yeah, that one's fine. You need to look at, you won't see any builds here, but if you go to tags, right under the I on the left. Yeah. Those are all the tags.
Okay. Cool. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
And you'll see tags out there. The way we tag it is based on branch plus a schematic number plus the git commit.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. And then I've got to catch up with the folks in India to give them an update on this. because they're interested in Captain as well, in the cloud event. So I'll update the notes today, and then I'll update what we talk about in the India time as well.
Okay.
And then I'm also thinking to increase the cadence of this, but instead, like, you don't have to be at the second week, but every second Friday would be at a later time, so India can join.
Yeah, whatever works for you folks. I may not be on there, but go ahead and schedule
we don't
it.
expect you. Yeah, we don't expect you to be, because it'll be quite late your time, but it will help us to get it going a little bit faster as well.
Yep. And just send an email to Tracy if you want her to publish the out on the calendar the time slot.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
She's the owner of the calendar, so she'll be able to put it out on there. So just drop her an email. Yeah,
sure. Yep. All right.
Alrighty, excellent.
I think that was good. It's good to have Adam on board as well. He's really good.
Yep. I think we're definitely getting our heads around this.
Yeah, not long now.
It's a little confusing, isn't it? few moving parts.
Yeah, it's all good. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good one.
Talk to you soon. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers.